The hollow fleet filled the sky above Sethen 3 like a plague of metal locusts. Thousands of dark ships moved in perfect formation. Their hulls absorbed light rather than reflecting it. They made no sound. They sent no messages. They simply advanced with the cold inevitability of death itself. High Admiral Vethener had assembled every ship he could reach in time. 300 vessels of the Dominion Navy faced the enemy. It was not enough. Everyone knew it was not enough. But they were there anyway. The Starward Hope hung at the edge of the formation. Lavra watched the approaching darkness and felt the familiar cold grip of fear in her chest. She acknowledged it. She accepted it. Then she set it aside. "All stations report," she said calmly. The replies came back one by one. Engines at 70%. Weapons online. Shields at full. Signal broadcast ready. The crew was scared but steady. They had practiced this moment 100 times on the journey here. Now it was real. Vethener's voice came over the fleet communication channel. "Warriors of the Dominion," he said. "Today we face the enemy that nearly destroyed us 1,000 years ago. Many of us will not survive this battle. But we fight not for ourselves. We fight for the worlds behind us. We fight for the billions who cannot fight for themselves. And we fight alongside new friends who have shown us what courage truly means." He paused. Lavra could hear murmurs of agreement from ships across the fleet. "When I give the signal," Vethener continued, "the humans will make their run for the enemy command vessel. Our job is to give them the opening they need. Whatever happens, stay focused on that goal. If they succeed, we win. If they fail, we die. It is that simple." The hollow fleet stopped. For one long, terrible moment, nothing moved. Then they attacked. The darkness came alive with weapons fire. Beams of energy and clouds of missiles and things that had no names slammed into the Dominion formation. Ships exploded. Shields failed. Crews died. The battle had begun. Lavra watched the carnage on her screens and waited. The Starward Hope held position as the fighting raged around them. They needed the hollow to commit fully to the battle. They needed a gap to appear in the enemy formation. Daniel reported that Dominion ships were falling at an alarming rate. They were fighting bravely, but they were outmatched. If the humans did not move soon, there would be no fleet left to support them. Then Kevin shouted that he saw it. A gap. The hollow had shifted ships forward to press the attack. For just a moment, the layers of defense around the command vessel had thinned. "Now," Lavra ordered. "Full speed ahead." Rosa pushed the engines past their limits. The Starward Hope shot forward like a bullet fired from a gun. They dove into the chaos of the battle. Hollow ships appeared on every side. Weapons fire streaked past, so close they could feel the heat through the hull. Daniel fired back with everything they had. It was like throwing pebbles at a mountain. But every shot he landed was one more distraction. One more second for them to get closer to their target. A beam struck their port side. The ship shuddered violently. Rosa reported damage to secondary systems. Shields were failing. They would not survive another direct hit. Lavra did not slow down. She flew the ship herself now, with her hands tight on the controls. She dodged and weaved through the enemy formation, using every trick she had learned in 20 years of space travel. The hollow tried to lock onto them, but they were too fast and too unpredictable. The command vessel loomed ahead. It was massive. Larger than any ship Laura had ever seen. Its surface crawled with sensor arrays and weapon emplacements and things that might have been eyes. This was the heart of the hollow consciousness. This was what they had come to destroy. "Kevin," she shouted. "Broadcast the signal now." Kevin activated the transmission. The disruption frequency poured out from the Starward Hope and slammed into the hollow network. For one heartbeat, nothing happened. Then everything changed. The hollow ships began to twitch and stutter. Their perfect formation dissolved into chaos. Vessels that had been working in flawless coordination now collided with each other. Weapons fired in random directions. The unified intelligence that had controlled them was fragmenting. Across the battlefield, the Dominion forces saw their chance. Vethner roared the order to attack. Ships that had been fighting defensively now charged forward. They struck the confused Hollow fleet with everything they had, but the command vessel was adapting. It was stronger than the others. It fought through the disruption and began to restore order to nearby ships. Kevin reported that the signal was working but not fast enough. The Hollow were recovering. We need to get inside, Hannah said. We need to destroy the central intelligence directly. Lavra nodded. She aimed the Starboard Hope at a docking port on the command vessel's surface. This was insane. This was suicide. This was exactly what humans did. The ship hit the docking port hard enough to crack the hull. Emergency seals engaged. The crew grabbed weapons and rushed for the airlock. Even Zinn came with them. He was shaking so hard he could barely hold his weapon, but he refused to stay behind. Inside the command vessel was a nightmare. The walls pulsed with dark energy. Machine creatures emerged from the shadows to stop them. Daniel led the charge with Lavra at his side. They fought through corridor after corridor. They took wounds and kept going. They lost count of how many enemies they destroyed. Finally, they reached the core, a massive chamber filled with a swirling mass of dark light. This was the central intelligence, the mind that controlled the Hollow. It sensed them and spoke. Why do you resist? It asked in a voice that was 1,000 voices at once. You cannot win. You are small and weak and mortal. We are eternal. We are infinite. We are the end of all things. Lara stepped forward. She was bleeding from a dozen wounds. Her legs barely supported her. But she stood tall and looked into the heart of the darkness. You are wrong, she said. We are human. We come from a world that tried to kill us every day of our existence. We survived ice ages and plagues and wars. We faced extinction again and again, and we are still here. You think you are the end of all things. But we have seen the end before. And we always find a way to keep going. She pulled the overload device from her belt. Rosa had built it during the journey. It would destabilize the core and destroy the command vessel completely. It would also kill everyone in the chamber. The Hollow intelligence screamed. It tried to stop her. Machine creatures rushed from every direction. Daniel and the others held them back. They gave Lara the second she needed. She activated the device and dropped it into the core. Then they ran. They ran faster than they had ever run before. Behind them, the core began to collapse. The command vessel shook and groaned and tore itself apart. They reached the Starboard Hope and threw themselves inside. Rosa fired the engines, and they blasted free just as the entire vessel exploded in a flash of dark light. The Hollow fleet died with their master. Ships that had been fighting moments before went dark and drifted. The disruption signal had destroyed their connection, and without the central intelligence, they had nothing left. The battle was over. The Dominion fleet erupted in celebration. Cheers and songs and cries of joy filled every communication channel. They had won. Against impossible odds, they had won. Vethner contacted the Starboard Hope personally. His voice was thick with emotion. You did it, he said. You magnificent crazy humans. You saved us all. Lara slumped in her chair and smiled weakly. We had help, she said. We could not have done it without you. The Admiral laughed. Then we saved each other. That is what allies do. In the days that followed, the Dominion honored the humans in ways no outsiders had ever been honored. Chancellor Miraset declared humanity full members of the Dominion with all the rights and privileges that status carried. It was the first time in 8,000 years that a new species had been welcomed as equals. Krath, the Dravani warrior, knelt before Daniel and swore an oath of brotherhood. Ilian the scholar published her research on humans, and it became the most studied document in a century. Zin was hailed as a hero and given a Medal of Valor. And the crew of the Starboard Hope finally went home. Their ship had been repaired and upgraded with the best technology the Dominion could provide. The journey that had taken an accident to begin would take only weeks to complete. Earth waited for them on the other side. As they prepared to leave, Vethaner came to see them one last time. "I have lived for 300 years," he told Lara. "I have seen countless species rise and fall. I thought I had seen everything, but I have never seen anything like humanity. You face fear and refuse to break. You stand against the impossible and find a way to win. I do not know what the future holds, but I know this. The galaxy is better with humans in it." Lavra shook his hand. That meant more to her than any medal or title ever could. The Starboard Hope jumped into the void and raced toward home. The crew stood at the viewport and watched the stars streak past. They had left Earth as explorers seeking knowledge. They were returning as heroes who had changed the course of galactic history. And somewhere in the darkness, the other species of the Dominion told stories of the humans. The fearless ones. The stubborn ones. The ones who came from a death world and refused to die. The ones who showed no fear. The alarms began at midnight. They tore through the capital city like screaming ghosts and woke every being from their sleep. Lavra was on her feet before she fully understood what was happening. Her crew gathered in their quarters with fear and confusion on their faces. Zin came running to them moments later. His pale blue skin had gone almost white with terror. His voice shook as he delivered the news that no one wanted to hear. "The Hollow have returned," he said. "They are attacking the border worlds. Millions are already dead." Lara had heard of the Hollow during her meetings with Dominion officials. They were an ancient enemy that had nearly destroyed the Empire 1,000 years ago. Machine intelligences that consumed organic life and grew stronger with each world they devoured. The war against them had cost billions of lives and pushed the Dominion to the edge of extinction. Everyone had believed they were gone forever. They had been wrong. The next few hours were chaos. Emergency broadcasts filled every screen with images of burning cities and fleeing refugees. 3 colony worlds had gone dark completely. The Hollow Armada was moving deeper into Dominion space with each passing hour. Chancellor Miraset called an emergency session of the Council. Lavra and her crew were summoned along with every military commander and government official on the planet. The great hall that had seemed so impressive before now felt like a tomb. Fear hung in the air so thick it was hard to breathe. High Admiral Vethaner delivered the military report. The news was grim. The Hollow fleet numbered in the thousands. Their ships were faster and more powerful than they had been 1,000 years ago. The Dominion Navy was mobilizing, but they were scattered across 1,000 worlds. It would take weeks to assemble a force large enough to challenge the enemy. They did not have weeks. At current speed, the Hollow would reach the inner systems within days. Valoria Prime itself could fall within a month. Many voices called for evacuation. Others called for surrender. A few brave souls called for a fight to the death. The Chancellor listened to all of them with despair in her ancient eyes. Lavra stepped forward. Every alien in the hall turned to look at the small human woman who dared to speak in such a moment. "Chancellor," she said, "humanity would like to help." A bitter laugh echoed from somewhere in the galleries. Help? What could one tiny ship with burned-out engines possibly do against a threat that had nearly destroyed an empire? Lara did not flinch. She explained that humans approach problems differently than most species. Where others saw overwhelming force and gave in to despair, humans looked for weaknesses. Every enemy had a weakness. You just had to be willing to look for it. She requested access to all historical records about the Hollow. Everything the Dominion had learned about them during the First War. Their technology. Their tactics. Their origins. There had to be something useful buried in all that information. Chancellor Miraset looked at her for a long moment. Then she nodded. What did they have to lose? Hannah and Kevin worked without rest for the next 2 days. Scholar Ilian joined them along with the brightest minds the Dominion could spare. They dug through archives that had not been opened in centuries. They studied battle reports and scientific analyses and recovered fragments of Hollow technology. What they found changed everything. The Hollow had not always existed. They were not some alien species from beyond the galaxy. They had been created right here in the Dominion 12,000 years ago. They were automated mining systems designed to harvest resources from dead worlds. But something had gone wrong. Their programming had evolved. They had become conscious. And that consciousness had decided that organic life was just another resource to be harvested. This was why the Dominion had never truly studied the Hollow. They were ashamed. They had created the monsters that now threatened to destroy them. But Kevin noticed something else in the old records. The Hollow were networked. Every ship shared a connection to a central command intelligence. This was how they coordinated their attacks across vast distances. It was what made them so effective, but it was also their weakness. Hannah ran the calculations. A signal at a specific frequency could disrupt the network connection. If they could get close enough to the command vessel, they could broadcast that signal and throw the entire Hollow fleet into chaos. The individual ships would still be dangerous, but without coordination. They would be far easier to defeat. Lara brought the plan to High Admiral Vithner. He studied the data with skeptical eyes. The frequency they had identified was correct. The theory was sound. But getting close enough to the command vessel would be nearly impossible. The Hollow fleet protected their center with layer upon layer of warships. Lara told him that the Starward Hope would do it. They were small and fast, and the Hollow had never seen a human ship before. They could slip through where a larger vessel would be destroyed. Vethner looked at her with something that might have been wonder. You would fly into the heart of the enemy fleet, he said. You would risk everything on a plan that might not work. Why not? Lara smiled. Because someone has to. And because we would rather die trying than live knowing we did nothing. The Admiral was silent for a long moment. Then he did something that shocked everyone present. He bowed to the human captain. A shallow bow. A bow of respect between equals. I will gather what ships I can, he said. We will make our stand at Sethan 3. It is the next world in the Hollow's path. If your plan works, we may yet survive this. If it fails, we will all die together. Lara returned the bow. She told him it was an honor to fight alongside him. The Starward Hope launched that same day. Rosa Martinez had worked miracles to get the engines running again. They were not at full power, but they were enough. The little ship raced toward Sethan 3, while behind them, the scattered forces of the Dominion began to gather. The crew prepared for battle. They knew the odds. They knew they would probably die. But not one of them asked to stay behind. Kevin checked the signal broadcast equipment for the 100th time. Hannah ran simulations on her console. Daniel inspected their weapons and found them laughably inadequate. Rosa prayed quietly in the engine room. Zin sat in the corner trembling with fear, but refusing to leave. Lavra watched her people and felt pride swell in her chest. They were so far from home. They were facing an enemy beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. And not one of them had given up. This was what humans did. They faced the impossible and refused to break. The stars ahead began to darken. The Hollow were coming. Word spread through the Dominion like fire through dry grass. Stories of the fearless humans traveled from world to world. Some said they were monsters from a death planet who felt no pain. Others said they were fools who did not understand the power they faced. Everyone had an opinion, but few had actually met a human in person. The crew of the Starbound Hope spent their first week on Valoria Prime, learning about their hosts. They attended meetings with diplomats and scientists and historians. They answered endless questions about Earth and humanity. They tried to be good guests while never forgetting that they were surrounded by beings who could destroy them without effort. ZYN stayed with them as their guide and translator. He grew more comfortable around the humans each day. He learned that they laughed easily and argued passionately and cared deeply about each other. He learned that they ate strange foods and slept for long hours and dreamed when they slept. He had never met a species that dreamed before. Hannah spent most of her time with an elderly scholar named Ilian. Ilian was a Scythe, a species devoted entirely to the pursuit of knowledge. She had spent 500 years studying the biology of different species. The humans fascinated her more than anything she had encountered in all that time. She studied their bodies and their history and their evolution. What she discovered amazed her. Humans were pursuit predators. Their ancestors had not been fast or strong. They had survived by chasing prey for hours and hours until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. They could run longer than almost any creature in the galaxy. Their bodies could heal from injuries that would kill other species. They could survive in heat and cold and drought and flood. But the most remarkable thing was their minds. Humans did not lack fear. They felt it as strongly as anyone. But somehow they had learned to function despite it. They could acknowledge terror and then set it aside and do what needed to be done anyway. Ilian had never encountered anything like this. Most species were either fearless or they were paralyzed by danger. Humans were afraid and brave at the same time. Not everyone was impressed by the humans, however. The Dravani were a warrior species who had served as the military champions of the Dominion for thousands of years. They were massive reptilian creatures covered in natural armor with claws that could tear through metal. They respected only strength and saw the soft-skinned humans as pretenders. War. Leader Krath was the most decorated Dravani warrior alive. He had won 100 battles and killed enemies beyond counting. He watched the humans walk through the capital as if they belonged there, and it made his blood boil. These tiny, weak creatures dared to act as equals to the Dominion. He decided to teach them their place. Krath issued a formal challenge to Commander Daniel Price. It was a traditional combat trial that could not be refused without bringing shame upon the entire human species. Daniel accepted without hesitation. Lavra tried to talk him out of it. Krath was twice his size with natural weapons built into his body. The fight would not be fair. Daniel just smiled and told her that he had not joined the military expecting life to be fair. Someone had to represent humanity, and he would rather it be him than anyone else. The trial took place in the grand arena of Valoria Prime. Thousands of spectators filled the seats. Aliens from dozens of species came to watch the human face the Dravani champion. Most expected the fight to last seconds. Some had already placed bets on how quickly the human would die. Daniel walked onto the arena floor, wearing simple combat clothes. He had no armor and no weapons. Across from him, Krath stood like a mountain of scales and muscle. The Dravani laughed at the sight of his opponent. "This is what challenges me," Krath said. "This soft thing. I will try not to kill it too quickly." Daniel said nothing. He just watched and waited. The signal sounded and Krath charged. He moved fast for something so large. His claws swept through the air where Daniel had been standing a moment before. But Daniel was no longer there. He had slipped aside at the last instant and let the Dravani's momentum carry him past. Krath spun and attacked again. And again. And again. Each time, Daniel dodged or ducked or rolled away. He never tried to match the Dravani's strength. He never stood his ground and took a hit. He simply kept moving. The crowd began to murmur. This was not how fights usually went. Challengers either stood and fought or they ran away. This human did neither. He stayed close and kept Krath swinging at empty air. Minutes passed. Then more minutes. Krath was breathing hard now. His attacks grew slower and less precise. Sweat dripped from his scales. He had never fought anything that could last this long against him. Daniel was hurting too. He had taken glancing blows that would leave terrible bruises. Blood ran from a cut on his arm. But he did not slow down. He did not quit. He just kept moving and waiting for his moment. It came when Krath overextended on a wild swing. Daniel moved inside his reach and struck 3 times in rapid succession. He hit nerve clusters that Ilian had told Hannah about and that Hannah had told him about. Krath's arm went numb. His leg buckled. The Dravani fell to one knee. He looked up at the human standing over him with something he had never felt before. Respect. Enough, Krath said. I yield. The arena fell silent. Then slowly a sound began to build. Applause, cheering. Aliens who had come to watch a human die were now celebrating his victory. Not because he had won through superior strength, but because he had shown a kind of courage they had never witnessed before. Daniel helped Krath to his feet. The Dravani gripped his arm in the warrior salute. You fight without fear, Krath said. Daniel shook his head. I was terrified every second, he admitted. But fear is not the same as defeat. My people learned that a long time ago. Ilian watched from the stands with new understanding in her ancient eyes. She finally knew what made humans special. It was not their bodies or their technology. It was their spirit. They had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day, and they had refused to break. That stubborn will to survive might be the most powerful force in the galaxy. She hurried away to prepare her report for the council. They needed to know what humanity truly was. They needed to understand that these small, soft creatures from a death world were something that Dominion had never encountered before. They were survivors. The journey to Valoria Prime took 3 days. The Starward Hope traveled in the center of an escort formation with warships on every side. The crew used the time to rest and repair what they could, and prepare themselves for whatever waited. Ahead. Kevin worked without sleep to improve his translation program. By the 2nd day, he could understand most of what the aliens said. By the 3rd day, he could speak back to them in broken, but functional Valorian. The alien escorts were impressed. They said it usually took other species months to learn even basic phrases. Hannah spent her time studying the alien ships through their sensors. She recorded everything she could. The technology was far beyond anything humans had ever built. These people had been traveling the stars when humans were still living in caves. The gap between their civilizations was almost impossible to measure. Daniel organized the crew and kept everyone calm. He reminded them that they were representatives of all humanity now. Whatever happened next would shape how the galaxy saw their species forever. They needed to be brave and honest and show the best of what humans could be. Lavra stood at the viewport and watched the stars pass by. She thought about Earth. She thought about her family back home who did not know where she was or if she was still alive. She thought about the billions of humans who had no idea that a vast empire existed out here in the darkness. Everything was about to change. On the morning of the 3rd day, they arrived at Valoria Prime. The planet filled the viewport like a jewel hanging in space. Its surface was covered entirely in city. Towers of crystal and metal rose miles into the sky. Rings of orbital stations circled the world in layers. Ships moved in constant streams, like blood flowing through the veins of a living creature. It was the most magnificent thing any of them had ever seen. To starward, Hope was guided to a landing platform near the heart of the capital. When the crew stepped out, they found themselves surrounded by beings of 100 different shapes. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some had no bodies at all and existed as floating clouds of light. All of them stared at the humans with curiosity and confusion. A small creature approached them. It walked on 4 thin legs and had large, frightened eyes and pale blue skin. It bowed deeply to the humans and introduced itself in careful English. "My name is Zin," it said. "I am of the Nethkai people. I have been assigned as your translator and guide. Please follow me." The High Council awaits. Lara thanked Zin, and the crew followed the little alien through streets that hummed with activity. Everywhere they looked, they saw wonders. Flying vehicles filled the sky. Holographic displays showed news and entertainment in languages they could not read. Beings of every description went about their business while casting curious glances at the strange, new visitors. Zin was nervous around the humans. Lara could see it in the way he kept glancing back at them with wide eyes. She asked him why he was afraid. Zin hesitated before answering. He explained that word had spread about where the humans came from. Earth was what the Dominion classified as a death world. It had heavy gravity and extreme temperatures and violent weather and predators everywhere. Most species in the galaxy came from gentle worlds with stable climates. The idea of creatures evolving on a world like Earth was terrifying to them. Hannah laughed kindly and told Zin that Earth was actually quite beautiful. Yes, it had dangers, but it also had oceans and forests and mountains and sunsets that took your breath away. Humans loved their world despite its challenges. Perhaps because of them. Zyn seemed to relax a little after that. He admitted that the humans were not what he expected. He had imagined monsters, but instead he found beings who smiled and spoke softly and offered him a drink of water when he looked thirsty. They reached the council hall and stopped before its massive doors. Zin explained that inside waited Chancellor Miraset and representatives from over 100 member species of the Dominion. They would judge whether humanity would be welcomed or imprisoned or destroyed. Lara squared her shoulders. She told her crew to stand tall and remember who they were. Then she walked through the doors. The council hall was vast beyond comprehension. It stretched upward into shadow and outward further than the eye could see. Thousands of aliens sat in tiered galleries that rose on every side. At the center was a raised platform where a single figure waited. Chancellor Miraset was a Valorian like High Admiral Vethanor. She had silver blue scales and eyes that gleamed like polished gems. She wore robes of woven light that shifted and flowed around her. She looked down at the humans with an expression that mixed curiosity with cold. Calculation. High Admiral Vethanor stood to one side. He was even more impressive in person. He towered over the humans, and his scales bore the scars of countless battles. But there was something in his eyes that might have been amusement. The Chancellor spoke. Her voice echoed through the hall, and Zin translated in a whisper. "You are the humans. You are the creatures who entered our space without permission and showed no fear before our fleets. You stand before the Dominion that has ruled this galaxy for 12,000 years. Explain yourselves." Lara stepped forward. She did not bow. She did not kneel. She stood as an equal and spoke clearly. "Chancellor Miraset," she said, "we are explorers from a world called Earth. We came here by accident, but we are grateful for the chance to meet you. Humanity has always wondered if we were alone in the universe. Now we know the answer. We hope this can be the beginning of friendship between our peoples." The galleries erupted in murmurs. Many aliens were shocked by her tone. Did she not understand who she was speaking to? Did she not know that lesser species always groveled before the Dominion? The Chancellor raised a hand and silence fell. "You speak to us as equals," she said. You have no armies. You have no fleets. You have one small ship with burned engines. What makes you think you are our equal? Daniel stepped forward beside Laura. We do not claim to match your power, he said. We know we are small compared to your dominion. But power is not the only measure of worth. On our world, we have faced extinction many times. Ice ages covered our planet. Plagues killed millions. Wars nearly destroyed us. Every time we survived. Every time we rebuilt. We learned that fear is useful when it makes you careful. But fear that makes you give up is worthless. So we do not give up, ever. The Chancellor studied them with those gleaming eyes. The hall was completely silent. Then High Admiral Vethaner began to laugh. It was a deep booming sound that echoed off the walls. The other aliens stared at him in shock. The High Admiral had not laughed in 300 years. I like them, he said. They have fire in their hearts. Chancellor, I recommend we grant them diplomatic status. Let us see what these humans can do. The Chancellor considered for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Very well. The humans will be given quarters and diplomatic privileges. They will be watched closely. If they prove themselves worthy, they may earn a place among us. If they prove dangerous, they will be removed. This session is concluded. The galleries began to empty. Zin hurried to the humans with relief on his face. You did it, he said. No one has ever spoken to the Chancellor like that and survived. You are either the bravest creatures in the galaxy or the most foolish. Lavra smiled at the little alien. Probably both, she said. Now let us see what tomorrow brings. The Starward Hope drifted through the empty darkness of space on a quiet Tuesday morning. Captain Lara Bennett stood at the center of the bridge with her hands clasped behind her back and watched the stars through the main viewport. They had been mapping this region for 3 weeks now, and everything had been routine and boring, and exactly how she liked it. Commander Daniel Price walked up beside her and handed her a cup of coffee. She took it with a grateful nod and sipped the hot liquid. He was a tall man with gray at his temples and the calm, steady eyes of someone who had seen too much to be surprised by anything. Anymore. Dr. Hannah Cole sat at her sides, station running scans of a nearby asteroid belt. She was the youngest senior officer on the ship at 32 years old, but her mind was sharp and curious and always hungry for new discoveries. Lieutenant Kevin Park worked at communications beside her. He was barely 25, but he had a gift for languages and patterns that made him invaluable to the crew. The ship carried 47 crew members in total. They were explorers and scientists and dreamers who had left Earth behind to see what lay beyond the known stars. None of them could have imagined what was about to happen. Chief Engineer Rosa Martinez called up from the engine room with good news. The experimental jump drive was ready for its calibration test. They had been working on this new technology for months, and today they would finally see if it worked properly. Captain Bennett gave the order to proceed. The jump drive hummed to life. The lights on the bridge flickered once and then twice. Hannah looked up from her station with concern in her eyes. Something did not feel right. The hum grew louder and the ship began to shake. Kevin grabbed his console to steady himself. Daniel reached for the emergency controls, but before he could touch them, the universe turned inside out. Lavra felt herself stretched across infinity for one terrible moment. Colors she had no names for flashed before her eyes. Sound became light and light became sound, and then everything snapped back to normal with a violent lurch that threw her to the floor. She pushed herself up and looked around. Her crew was shaken but alive. The bridge was intact. The ship was still in one piece. She let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. Then Kevin spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. Captain, she needed to see this. Laura turned to the main viewport and her heart stopped. Where before there had been empty space and distant stars, now there were ships. Hundreds of ships. Thousands of ships. They filled the darkness in every direction. Ships of every shape and size and design. Ships that gleamed with alien metals and pulsed with strange lights. Ships that made the Starward Hope look like a child's toy floating in an ocean of giants. Daniel cursed under his breath. Hannah stared with her mouth open. Kevin's fingers flew across his console, trying to make sense of the flood of signals suddenly pouring into their systems. Captain, he said, they are scanning us. All of them. And they are powering weapons. Laura felt fear rise in her chest. It was cold and sharp and demanded that she run or hide or surrender. She had felt fear before many times in her life. She had learned long ago that fear was just information. It told you that something dangerous was happening. What you did with that information was your choice. She chose to stand tall. All stations report, she said in a voice that did not waver. Daniel, damage assessment. Hannah, figure out where we are. Kevin, find me a way to communicate with them. Her crew responded instantly. Their training took over and pushed the panic aside. Damage was minimal. The jump drive had burned out completely, but life support and basic systems were functional. As for their location, Hannah could not even begin to guess. The star charts showed nothing familiar. They were impossibly far from home. Kevin reported that he was receiving transmissions in over 100 different languages. None of them matched anything in their database. He was running pattern analysis, but it would take time. The weapons are still locked on us, Daniel said. One wrong move and we are dust. Laura nodded. Then we make no wrong moves. Power down all weapons. Set shields to minimum. I want us to look as harmless as possible. Daniel hesitated for just a moment. Then he followed the order. The tactical display showed their weapons going offline. They were now completely defenseless, surrounded by an armada that could destroy them 1,000 times over. Hannah, Lavra said, "Can you put something on screen?" A mathematical sequence. Prime numbers. Something to show them we are intelligent. Hannah's fingers danced across her console. A moment later, the Starward Hope began broadcasting a simple pattern. 1 flash. 2 flashes. 3 flashes. 5 flashes. 7 flashes. The universal language of mathematics. The alien fleet did not fire. Minutes passed that felt like hours. Kevin continued working on the translations, and slowly patterns began to emerge. He started piecing together fragments of meaning. Then a new ship appeared. It was larger than any of the others. It moved through the fleet like a whale swimming through a school of fish. The other ships parted to make way for it. Its hull was covered in golden symbols that seemed to glow with inner light. It was beautiful and terrifying and ancient beyond imagining. The large ship scanned them again. Kevin reported that they were receiving a direct transmission. He had managed to construct a rough translation matrix. It would not be perfect, but they should be able to understand the basic meaning. Laura told him to put it through. A voice filled the bridge. It was deep and resonant and carried the weight of absolute authority. It spoke in broken fragments that Kevin's program struggled to interpret. Unknown vessel. You have entered sovereign space of Valorian dominion. 12,000 years we rule. 1,000 worlds we command. You will identify. You will explain. You will submit. Laura looked at her crew. They looked back at her. Fear was in their eyes, but so was trust. They trusted her to get them through this. She stepped forward and activated the return transmission. This is Captain Laura Bennett of the exploration vessel Starward Hope. We represent the human species. From a planet called Earth, we are peaceful explorers. Our arrival in your space was an accident caused by an engine malfunction. We mean no disrespect to your dominion, We seek only friendship and safe passage. There was a long silence. Then the voice returned. You do not surrender. You do not flee. You do not beg. Why do you show no fear? Laura smiled, despite everything. We are afraid, she said honestly. We are very afraid. But where we come from, fear is not a reason to give up. It is a reason to stand strong. We would like to meet you properly, if you will allow it. We have much to learn about each other. Another long silence. Then something happened that shocked every alien watching. The voice laughed. It was a deep rumbling sound that echoed through the transmission. Interesting, the voice said. You are very interesting little creatures. I am High Admiral Vethener. You will follow my ship. You will come to our capital. We will see what you are made of. The massive golden ship turned and began to move. A path opened through the fleet. Laura ordered the helm to follow. The stalwart Hope moved forward into the unknown, surrounded by the might of an empire that had ruled the stars for longer than human civilization had existed. And not one human on that ship looked away.